50,000 Americans marched through the frozen streets of Minneapolis in late January 2026. Businesses shuttered, workers walked out, and within days, protest movements demanding accountability spread to cities in every corner of the country. This was not a one-day event. This was the opening of a sustained confrontation between a president determined to expand executive power and a population increasingly unwilling to accept what they see as lawlessness dressed in the language of law and order. At the center of this escalating crisis sits a question that will define the 2026 midterm elections. Should Donald Trump be impeached for a third time? The answer depends on who you ask. But the pressure is now impossible to ignore. This is the story of how a convergence of crises turned impeachment from a fringe demand into a mainstream political question. Why Democratic leadership remains paralyzed between grassroots fury and electoral caution. And why the president himself has transformed the threat of impeachment into a rallying cry for his supporters. To understand how the country arrived at this moment, you need to understand what has happened in the first year of Trump's second term. Not the rhetoric, not the social media posts, the actions themselves. On January 3, 2026, American military forces executed the largest operation in Latin America since the invasion of Panama in 1989. Without congressional authorization, without a declaration of war, and without advance notification to congressional leadership, Special Operations Forces captured Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and transported him to New York to face narco-terrorism charges. The president stood before cameras at Mar-a-Lago and called it one of the most stunning displays of American military might in history. He announced the United States would run Venezuela until further notice. Congress learned about the operation from news reports. Democrats were furious. Representative Delia Ramirez of Illinois called it an impeachable offense and demanded Trump's removal. Representative Dan Goldman of New York, a former prosecutor who had served as counsel during Trump's first impeachment, said the operation violated the Constitution and called for Republican colleagues to join in holding the president accountable. Representative Jared Huffman of California went further, telling reporters the country was now in 25th Amendment territory. Representative Gil Cisneros of California put it more bluntly. The president has lost his mind. But the Venezuela operation was only the beginning. On January 6, 2026, the Department of Homeland Security announced what it called the largest immigration enforcement operation ever conducted in American history. Approximately 2,000 federal agents descended on the Minneapolis-St. Paul metropolitan area as part of Operation Metro Surge. The stated objective was to target fraud in social services. What followed would transform Minnesota into a domestic crisis zone. On January 7th, Immigration and Customs Enforcement agent Jonathan Ross shot and killed Renee Good, a 37-year-old woman, as she sat in her vehicle. Video of the shooting circulated immediately. It showed Good moving her car forward as Ross stood to the side. 3 shots. She was dead within seconds. Federal officials defended the shooting, claiming the agent acted in self-defense after Good tried to run him over. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey watched the video and held a press conference. His response was direct. Having seen the video myself, I want to tell everybody directly that is bullshit. To ICE, get the fuck out of Minneapolis. Governor Tim Walz called the killing the consequence of governance designed to generate fear, headlines, and conflict. He ordered the Minnesota National Guard into a state of preparedness. Protests began immediately. Thousands filled the streets despite sub-zero temperatures. The demonstrations continued through January, growing in size as frustration mounted. Then, on January 23rd, more than 50,000 people participated in a general strike. Hundreds of businesses closed. Clergy members were arrested at the airport. The message was unified: end the federal operation. One day later, the crisis escalated again. On January 24th, Alex Pretty, a 37-year-old intensive care nurse who worked at the Minneapolis Veterans Affairs Hospital, was shot and killed by Customs and Border Protection agents. Pretty had been recording federal officers on his phone and directing traffic. Video reviewed by multiple news organizations showed him standing between an agent and a woman who had been pushed to the ground. He was pepper sprayed, tackled, and surrounded by approximately 6 federal agents. Then he was shot multiple times. The video spread across social media within minutes. Witnesses said agents appeared to count bullet wounds rather than administer CPR. A federal judge issued an emergency restraining order barring the government from destroying evidence. Candlelight vigils filled neighborhoods across the Twin Cities that night. A GoFundMe for Pretty's family raised $1 million within 24 hours. Bruce Springsteen wrote and recorded a protest song, Streets of Minneapolis, which debuted at #1 on iTunes within days. House Democratic leadership had been cautious about impeachment through most of 2025. Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi had suggested that while Trump crossed the line during his first term, the actions of his second term did not yet warrant the same response. Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries acknowledged the votes were not there and suggested Democrats should focus on winning the midterm elections. But the killings of Renee Good and Alex Pretty changed the calculation. Representative Robin Kelly of Illinois introduced articles of impeachment against Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. Within 2 weeks, more than 160 Democrats had signed on as co-sponsors. Democratic leadership issued a joint statement demanding Trump fire Noem immediately or face impeachment proceedings in the House. "We can do this the easy way or the hard way," Jeffries, Whip Catherine Clark, and caucus chair Pete Aguilar declared. Senator Chuck Schumer joined the chorus. "Kristi Noem is a liar, she's vicious, she's also incompetent. Donald Trump must fire her at once before another American is killed under her watch." Senate Democrats blocked appropriations that included DHS funding. Senator Rand Paul, a Republican, called for an independent investigation and demanded testimony from immigration officials. Republican Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina became the first Senate Republican to say he had lost confidence in Noem, and the calls for impeaching Trump himself began multiplying. Representative Jamie Raskin, the top Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee, said publicly there was definitely a rising clamor for impeachment. He called for a structured method of thinking through all the lawlessness and criminality taking place. Representative Maxine Waters, who had long been skeptical that impeachment was viable given Republican control of Congress, issued a statement reconsidering her position. Even if Republicans refuse to act, Democrats cannot remain silent or passive in the face of actions this extreme from this administration. Progressive candidates running for Congress in 2026 began making impeachment a central demand. Kat Abu-Ghazaleh, who is running for a seat in Illinois, argued Democratic leaders needed to grow a spine and treat impeachment as just another tool in the accountability machine. The president watched all of this unfold, and he responded exactly the way his critics expected. On January 6th, the 5th anniversary of the Capitol attack, Trump addressed House Republicans at a policy retreat. He had one central message: win the midterms or I will be impeached. "You got to win the midterms," Trump told the assembled lawmakers. "They'll find a reason to impeach me. I'll get impeached." He dismissed his previous impeachments as illegitimate. "I got impeached twice on nothing, a perfect phone call," and he described Democrats in terms designed to rally his base. "They're vicious people, they're violent, they stick together like glue." The president repeated this message in subsequent appearances. During an interview while visiting Iowa, he warned that Democrats would find something to justify impeachment. "They impeached me twice," he said. "They're very nasty people, and they have bad policy." After video surfaced of Alex Pretty confronting federal agents 11 days before his death, Trump posted on Truth Social that Pretty was an agitator and perhaps insurrectionist. He praised the ICE officers for remaining calm and cool. He called Pretty's actions crazy and violent. From the White House, Trump offered a summary of his position on the Minneapolis crisis. "I'll say it very plainly. Elections have consequences. The people want law and order, and we have a silent majority. They like what we're doing." Republican strategists saw an opportunity. Throughout 2025, operatives had been planning to use the threat of impeachment as a turnout mechanism for the midterms. The argument would be simple. If Democrats retake the House, they will impeach the president. Voters who supported Trump in 2024 would need to return to defend him in 2026. Representative Dan Muser of Pennsylvania articulated the strategy clearly. They will do anything to stop the Trump agenda. People, if they don't want a 2-year president, who they voted for pretty overwhelmingly in 2024, can't allow the House to flip. The calculation assumes that impeachment remains politically toxic for Democrats, that voters will see it as an overreach, as a partisan attack rather than a constitutional remedy, that the party pressing for accountability will suffer more than the president facing charges. But that assumption is being tested in real time. The scale of protests in Minneapolis has exceeded anything witnessed during the first Trump administration. 50,000 people marched in below-zero temperatures. Businesses participated in coordinated shutdowns. Musicians held benefit concerts. Local officials openly confronted federal agents. A federal judge found that ICE had violated at least 96 court orders in Minnesota since the beginning of 2026 alone. The polling data suggests a public that has seen what happened. A Quinnipiac survey found 82% of registered voters had seen video of Renee Good's shooting. That number has likely increased since Alex Pretty's death. Awareness is not the issue. Interpretation is. Democrats face a genuine strategic dilemma. Impeachment requires a majority in the House. Even if they regain the chamber in November, conviction and removal require 2/3 of the Senate. That threshold has never been reached for any American president. Trump was impeached twice during his first term and acquitted both times. Former Speaker Pelosi counseled patience. There's only one person responsible for the impeachment of Donald Trump, and that's Donald Trump. He gave us no choice. He crossed the line here and there. But she suggested current circumstances do not warrant the same response. What we're here to do is meet the needs of the American people. Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut argued Trump has committed far more impeachable acts in his second term than in his first. But he also said any impeachment effort should wait until after the midterm elections. Other Democrats reject this approach. Representative Sri Thanadar of Michigan introduced 7 articles of impeachment against Trump in May 2025, arguing the president should be removed for ignoring the Constitution, Congress, and the courts. Representative Al Green of Texas has repeatedly brought impeachment resolutions to the floor, only to see them defeated with bipartisan opposition. The House has already rejected 2 impeachment pushes from Green. In June 2025, 128 Democrats voted with Republicans to block charges related to strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities conducted without congressional authorization. In December, another effort focused on Trump's comments about military service members was defeated with Democratic support. Democratic leaders called impeachment a sacred constitutional vehicle requiring a comprehensive investigative process. None of that serious work has been done, they argued, with the Republican majority focused solely on rubber-stamping Donald Trump's extreme agenda. This is the tension at the heart of the Democratic dilemma. The party's base is demanding action. Progressive activists argue that failing to pursue impeachment normalizes unconstitutional behavior and habituates the public to executive overreach. They point to the Venezuela operation, the DOJ investigations of political opponents, the deployment of federal agents to American cities, and the deaths of American citizens at the hands of those agents. But party strategists worry that impeachment will backfire. Former Representative Cheri Bustos, who led the Democratic Campaign Committee, warned that if candidates and members of Congress are not relentlessly focusing on people's everyday lives, they are making a mistake. There's so much of what President Trump has done, is doing, will do, that can be labelled impeachable offences. But in the end, what good is it going to do? The fear is that impeachment energizes Trump's base more than it mobilizes Democratic voters, that it shifts the conversation from kitchen table issues to constitutional abstractions, that it allows Republicans to cast Democrats as obsessed with destroying Trump rather than helping ordinary Americans. But there is a counter-argument gaining strength within the party. Every day that impeachment is not pursued is another day of normalization. Another day where the public adjusts to a president who launches military operations without congressional approval, whose agencies kill American citizens in the streets, whose administration ignores court orders by the dozens. The question is not whether Trump has committed impeachable offenses. Even some Republicans have acknowledged as much. Representative Don Bacon of Nebraska said an invasion of Greenland, as Trump had threatened, would lead to his immediate impeachment with Republican support. Senator Tillis openly withdrew his confidence from Noem. The question is whether the political system can function when one party controls enough of the machinery to block accountability regardless of the conduct in question. Trump has already been impeached twice. He was acquitted twice. He ran for president after his second impeachment and won. The lesson he and his supporters have drawn is clear. Impeachment is a political process, and political processes are won by those who maintain their coalition. This creates a structural asymmetry. Democrats need to flip voters. Republicans need to maintain loyalty. The president's strategy of transforming impeachment into a rallying cry is designed to ensure that any accountability effort becomes a tribal identifier, a signal of partisan allegiance rather than constitutional seriousness. Whether this strategy works depends on whether the events of January 2026 have changed the political landscape. The deaths of Renee Good and Alex Pretty are not abstractions. They are Americans killed by federal agents, their final moments captured on video and viewed by tens of millions. Governor Tim Walz put it this way after the Department of Justice announced a civil rights investigation into Pretty's killing. Trump's right hand cannot be responsible for investigating his left hand. We need an independent, impartial investigation now. The winds of public opinion, Walz said, are at our back. Whether those winds translate into political consequences depends on decisions that have not yet been made. Congressional Democrats must decide whether to pursue impeachment as a matter of principle, regardless of the outcome, or to focus their energy on winning elections that might give them the power to impose accountability through other means. Republican members of Congress must decide whether the events in Minnesota represent a line that cannot be crossed, or whether loyalty to the president supersedes concerns about executive overreach and civilian deaths. And voters must decide whether the president who promised law and order is delivering it, or whether the chaos-consuming Minneapolis is exactly what governance by fear and conflict looks like. The protests continue, the legal battles multiply, the investigations proceed, and the question of impeachment hangs over everything, not as a prediction of what will happen, but as a measure of what the political system is capable of confronting. Donald Trump has been impeached twice before. Both times he survived. Both times he emerged politically strengthened. He is betting that the third time, if it comes, will follow the same pattern. His opponents are betting that this time is different, that the scale of what has happened cannot be normalized, that the American public will not accept a president whose agents kill citizens in the street and whose administration ignores court orders by the score. One of these bets is wrong. The 2026 midterm elections will determine which one.